Our theme today is communion, the essence of worship. And I need to state before I read our passage from John chapter 6 that we're using that term communion not to talk about passing a tray with little cups of juice or little pieces of bread. We're talking about communion, communing with God. And in John chapter 6, again, we're entering into the middle of an encounter, this time Jesus with some of his fellow Jews who are not understanding what Jesus is saying about him being the bread of life, or the bread of heaven that comes down to give life to the world. We pick up in John chapter 6 at verse 52. Then the Jews began to argue sharply among themselves, "How can this man give us his flesh to eat?" Jesus said to them, "Very truly I tell you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you. Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life, and I will raise them up on the last day. For my flesh is real food, and my blood is real drink. Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood remains in me, and I in them, just as the living Father sent me, and I live because of the Father. So the one who feeds on me will live because of me. This is the bread that came down from heaven. Your ancestors ate manna and died, but whoever feeds on this bread will live forever." And then at verse 63, Jesus says, "The Spirit gives life. The flesh counts for nothing. The words I have spoken to you, they are full of the Spirit and life." So you can hear in John chapter 6, Jesus is sort of echoing back to that conversation we mentioned yesterday with the Samaritan woman about worshiping in spirit and in truth. And now in what's known as the bread of life discourse in John chapter 6, Jesus is talking about the spirit and life, the life that's available to us through him. And Jesus contrasts in that extended discussion the bread that their ancestors ate in the wilderness, the manna, which only lasted for a day. And the people were commanded by Moses only to take enough for that day. And even some people who tried to hoard more for themselves, you couldn't eat the manna the next day. It was gross. But when we feed on Jesus, we have food that will last us for all eternity. And Jesus says we will remain in him just as he remains in the Father, and he will raise us up on the last day. And so as we continue our journey this week, focusing on worship, I encourage you to focus on this image of Jesus being the bread of heaven, who's come down to give life to the world and to give life to you and to me. And just like physical bread, we have to eat it in order for us to gain the energy and the nutrients that it possesses. We want to make sure that we are taking Jesus in so that he is feeding our soul as well.